Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, welcome back to another video, and welcome back to another Witch Wednesdays. It's been a while, I know, I'm so sorry, but I'm really excited for this one. No idea when it's going to go up because I think it's going to take me a few sessions to film. There's just no way this is going to be done in one part, especially because I'm recording this first bit at 9 o'clock at night. So it's definitely not going to be done in one sitting. As you can see, it's currently on the run up to Christmas. I have a little tinsel star wearing a Santa hat, but by the time you see this it might have already been Christmas, in which case you'll be like, Lauren, why have you got your Christmas decorations up? Because it's currently the 16th of December, that is why. So today's video is one I've been wanting to do for a while, but it's definitely going to be a lengthy one. Hopefully it'll all be one video, but it might end up needing to be parts just because Sony Vegas really doesn't like it when I try and render anything that's like more than an hour long. It starts getting very pissy with me. As soon as you hit 2 hours, it just is like, die. So it might be in parts, but I'll try my best. But what we're doing today is ranking every episode of the Witch animated series. So 52 episodes ranked from 1 to 52, and I feel like I have to say, like, disclaimer, I'm not saying this is set in stone. It's really hard for me to judge all 52 episodes against each other. It's like I've got definite favourites, I've got definite least favourites, and then in the middle it was very much a case of me just trying to figure out. I did it on Paint so that I could like click and drag the titles around to try and put it into an order. So I've decided on an order, I've put it on my screen, but I can't say for definite that it probably will change. My favourite episodes of Witch have changed so much. Obviously I started watching the show when I was 9, I'm now 26, so over the years my favourites have changed because I've changed as a person, my personality's changed, my likes and dislikes have changed, and what I find entertaining has changed. So the episodes that I thought were the best when I was 9, maybe quite a few of them have moved further down the list, and I've moved other ones up. So this is my list right now, but honestly it could all change. It could have changed by the time I even get this uploaded. I might have changed my opinion, but I spent quite a lot of time trying to put this together, so I'm gonna go with this as the right list as it stands. But yeah, so starting at the bottom, because it's way more fun to start a list at the bottom and go up than start at the top and work down. So let's get right into it, shall we? So coming in at number 52 on the list, my least favourite episode of Witch is the second season opener episode, A is for Anonymous. A is for Anonymous is probably the only episode of Witch I can genuinely say I don't like, or at least it definitely is the one I like the least, and actually it's the only one that I tend to skip. I actually usually, if I'm watching the series through, will just go straight from the final battle to B is for Betrayal because I just don't like this episode that much. For me, I just think it's a really strange episode. I don't think the plot makes a lot of sense. I really respect the idea of that it's about Tarani, who definitely needed a spotlight episode because she didn't really get a huge amount of look in season 1, and she needed more characterization other than just smart and scared. And I liked that for her. I liked that she had this idea of like, if I'm not a guardian, who am I? I'm going to become anonymous again. And that's fine, and that worked. What didn't work was this whole nonsense about like Frost being like disguised as a bald guy walking down the street, and then Tarani gets like lured to the beach in the snow and all the girls are trapped in a bubble, and it's like, no matter how many times I've watched it, I've still never actually made sense of what that storyline was supposed to be. Like, what is the point of that episode? I've never figured out what is going on. It just feels so disjointed. It doesn't feel like it makes any sense. And considering the writing in Witch is normally so good, this one just stands out to me as like a real outlier in the series, that like every other episode is so good and A's for Anonymous is just so bad. It just doesn't fit at all. And considering it's the opening episode of season 2, you would think it would be like really good because they want to like get you know, open up with a bang, and they don't. It's such a bad episode. It's such a letdown. I still remember when I watched it as a kid, like, I was so excited. It's like, oh my god, season 2, what's it going to be like? And this episode come on, I'm like, this is really bad. I really hope this isn't the way the whole season's going to go, and thankfully it's not. But I think it's quite a bad episode. It's a long time ago, I probably would have been like, I don't like A's for Anonymous because Cornelia and Caleb break up in it and I'm offended. But nowadays, that's actually one of the only things about the episode I like, because I like their breakup storyline. I think it really benefited them as characters. Plus, it's, you know, it's got Cornelia giving Blanc a hug, and I always appreciate people actually, you know, giving Blanc the love he deserves, because he's an angel. But, on the whole, I just think it's a really bad episode. It's definitely got some highlights. I love a guy was walking behind you and he kept walking line.
Tense much?
Hey, Lynn, Irma, thank goodness. I think someone was following me to school.
Did it have those bony horn things? 2 legs or a tail?
No, it was a guy. Or he looked like a guy, anyway.
Well, where is he now?
He kept walking.
All right, so let me get this straight. A guy was walking behind you, and then he kept walking.
Yeah.
Scary.
I think that's hysterical. And definitely describes me at any situation when I'm out walking and there's anybody walking in my general vicinity. I'm like, he's gonna murder me. And then he doesn't, and I'm like, all I hear in my head is, some guy was walking behind you and he kept walking. Scary. And Tirani, like, deciding to be late to class so that she could build a snowman to try and, like, have a bad girl image, but she, like, can't do it. And then she gets to class and the teacher's like, whatever, Tirani, just sit down, it's fine. Because when you're a good girl, you get away with these things, because they're like, well, clearly it was, you know, you didn't mean to be late, you're never late. So, I really like Tirani's story. I just think that the actual plot of the episode didn't feel like it made any sense, and it didn't feel like it did anything. It just felt like nonsense. It felt like complete nonsense. So, A's for Anonymous has always been the episode that I think really lets down the series. I think it would be like 52 episodes of perfection if that one wasn't there, bringing it down, which is a shame. At number 51, and I have to make a heartfelt apology to Greg Wiseman here, because I've ranked the only 2 episodes that he ever wrote for the series himself. I ranked them both at the bottom of my list. A is for Anonymous was written by Greg Wiseman, and so was Z is for Zenith. Z is for Zenith is the season 2 finale, so I've got the season 2 opener and finale as my 2 least favourite episodes, but I honestly wholeheartedly think that's where they belong. Z is for Zenith, for me, is not a particularly substantial episode. I really don't know how to describe it. I just feel like it doesn't have a lot of weight to it. I feel like the final battle felt powerful. Like, when I watched it, it felt like we were really in the final battle, and Elion finally facing Phobos and, you know, telling him to essentially get to fuck, and, you know, everyone kind of being scared because it's like, oh god, this is us going to finally go into the castle and face Phobos, and we don't know what's going to happen. And even though they had actually the stakes were even higher in Z is for Zenith because they're fighting something much worse, I just didn't feel like it had weight. And I think one of the reasons that I get really angry about this episode is there's this one scene where the girls are fighting the giant Cedric, and VMJ pulls up in a limo, and he gets out the limo, and all the girls are like, oh my god, it's VMJ. And I'm like, you're fighting for your lives here. You're fighting a giant Cedric who's going to destroy your city, which has all your family members in it, and you're looking at VMJ? Really? And it's like, it's that kind of thing that, like, kills the tension for me. Like, final battle from start to finish felt like it was serious. It felt like it had weight. And Z is for Zenith just doesn't. To me, I don't feel like I'm, like, in the throngs of, like, a big battle. I don't feel that energy of, like, this is it. This is do or die. I'm just kind of like, this episode is really not doing anything for me. And it's taken up so much. Like, the finale, the end bit, where they're, like, recapping everything that's happened, I think its length sort of means that there's not so much, I don't know, it's like, the intro bit is with them all stuck inside their minds, and the end of the episode is the sort of recap of what happens next, which does need to be there, kind of, because we never got any more series, so you kind of need to wrap it up. But it means that the whole episode itself is shorter, like it feels shorter because they've got it bookended with these other scenes. And it just doesn't feel powerful to me. It has moments that I like. Cornelia and Caleb and their scene on Kandrakar, obviously one of my favourites because they're my OTP. But I think it's let down in so many ways. There's hardly any Caleb in it, which I know there are people who wouldn't give a shit, but Caleb's my favourite character. I would die for him in any day. And I'm like, he still is like one of the main characters of this show. You can't just shaft him in the finale. Like, come on, give him something to do. And then it just sort of feels like most of the episode is just one big fight scene with Cedric, and it's not interesting. I don't know. I just don't like it. I just don't think it's very good. And I think as the finale of the entire series, it just kind of brings me down that it's not better. It disappoints me so much. And I think, especially when you compare it to the final battle, I think the final battle is a really good episode, and you'll see that it is fairly high on my list. Yes, it is fairly high on my list. I was looking, I'm like, where is it? It's very high on my list, whereas Zenith for Zenith is second from the bottom, and I think that says something about the disparity between the first season finale and the second season finale. And I just feel like, as much as Greg Wiseman was now he always wants to correct what this is, he's like creative producer? He always corrects you if you get his job title wrong. I know he was overall in charge of the plot of the second season, so I'm not saying it's him that was doing something wrong, but I just feel like that wasn't the right direction for the first episode or the last episode of season 2. And he wrote both of them, and I'm not saying it's his fault that they're bad, but he did, and that can't be ignored. I wish they were better. I wish Zenith for Zenith made me feel something, but it kind of doesn't. I think right at the very beginning it does, when, like, you know, you have that moment where Caleb's like,
we've already lost Meridian and Kandrakar. Earth must not fall. Go!
And I'm like, yeah. And then, like, you know, Will and Matt are standing on the cliff, and, you know, they're like, oh, I've been a sucker for a doomed romance. But then Irma ruins it by calling them Romeo and Juliet. I'm like, will you just let us have this moment? Can we just have one moment of seriousness in this goddamn episode, please? But then it's like, from then on, and nothing in that episode feels serious. It just all feels like complete pish. So... And sometimes I wish that the show had ended with Narissa just taking over the world, because I'm like, you know what? That would have been hella fun. Rivervale. Narissa Vale. Fucking Rivervale. Number 50. God, we're on to the top 50. We're really powering through this list of 52 episodes. Number 50 is C is for Changes. C is for Changes breaks my heart because I feel like that episode has so much potential and delivers on none of it. I've watched that episode so many times. Like, it's weird. It's like I put it on because I hope that if I put it on, it will be better this time. As if, like, I'm like, maybe this time it will actually be good. And then I watch it and I'm like, nope, still bad. C is for Changes. I feel like part of the problem is probably the demographic. I feel like they've got a really good concept there, but it's a very hard concept to put into a TV show when your demographic is about 10 years old. Because the idea of the episode is that Alchemy, one of, well, she's like Elion and Cornelia's like best friend, realizes, and has been realizing for a while, that she hasn't heard a lot from Elion since Elion allegedly went on holiday with her family months ago, and I'm really surprised that the state hasn't had anything to say about that, because you can't just take, well, I don't know what the rules were in 2004, but like, in Britain, you can't just take your kid out of school on a holiday and not bring them back. They will fine you a lot. They fine you for like every day that your kid's out of school on a holiday, so you take your kid out of school for like months at a time, you're gonna have a hefty fine. So I imagine the Browns coming back to their house and just finding a massive pile of fines behind the front door for Elion. But yeah, so Alchemy basically goes and reports the fact that she hasn't heard hide nor tail of Elion in months, and she's getting quite concerned about Elion's whereabouts. And this ends up getting passed to Interpol. And they're treating it like a missing person case. Like, Elion and her family have disappeared, and they think that the Guardians have something to do with it. They think, because Witch seem to be covering, and they all have the different stories. They all go into the room and say Elion's in a completely different location, and they think, as they say, either they're trying to cover for something, or they're all just as clueless as each other and they're just repeating rumours. But it's like this idea that they think that the girls have done something to Elion, and it's like, that is a really dark concept. It's dark enough that they think this girl has gone missing, and clearly the implication is they think she might be dead, and they think that the girls have done something to her. Now, we know, you know, if you watch true crime like I do, you know that horrible things like that have happened, where young girls have been murdered by the group that they think are their friends, but they're not really their friends. They're just horrible, horrible people. So it's like, that absolutely is a possibility, and it's important to consider these things. But how on earth do you translate a situation like that into a TV show for children? And I think they had a really clever concept in their head, and when they started trying to put it on paper, they had to keep pulling it back until it was child friendly, until it didn't make sense anymore, because the episode feels like it should be so heavy, because that's such a heavy concept, but not a lot is really done with it. And I don't think it's entirely their fault, but I also think maybe if your concept's too heavy, you need to pull the concept back, because what ended up happening here is that instead of having a really heavy episode, you've got a really heavy concept that you can't really deliver because it's not appropriate for the demographic that you're putting your episode out to. This is one of these things that I'm like, if they brought Witch back today and made it for older people, that would be a great aspect to really go heavy on, is like this like idea of what the hell happened to Elion, why is she missing? It's introduced in the second issue of the comic, this idea. That's where this comes from, incredibly. This episode, C's for Changes, is actually based on the second issue of the comic, so we're going right back to the start, which is the idea that Elion has disappeared, and her family have disappeared, and her house has got, you know, the flowers are dying, and the mail's piling up, and the milk bottles are on the doorstep, and no one's there, and what's happened, and they have to call in, you know, Medina and McTiernan to investigate what's happened to this family, why have they disappeared. But I think C's for Changes just doesn't really do anything, and they try and couple it in with this idea of like each of the girls getting a new power, and it just sort of, it all just kind of doesn't really do much, because then there's all this stuff about like, you know, Irma and her dad, and then she realizes she has like mind control powers, and then Will's trapped in her bedroom, but you know, they need to like break out because they all need to like go on the run, and then at the very end, they lure Interpol to the airport, and Elion's just like standing there and is like, hey guys, I'm back from my holiday. And Interpol are just like, oh, I guess she was on holiday after all, never mind. And it's like, that's it? That's all you're gonna do? Which is why in my personal season 3 that I have in my head, Medina and McTiernan come back and say that they were never quite entirely comfortable with the idea that Elion really had just been on holiday the whole time, and then I have a whole story about what happens next. It involves the fact that Cassidy's come back to life, because I'm pretty sure you can't just come back to life like 40 years after your death and no one picks up on that. I feel like eventually that's going to cause problems. So, but yeah, I feel like that episode had a huge amount of potential and it couldn't deliver, and it breaks my heart because it could have been such a good thing. Also, I feel like a plot like that needs more than one episode. That's a lot of story to cram into 22 minutes, but... Number 49, we have our first season 1 entry on this list, because the past 3 have all been season 2. And people wonder why I say that I prefer season 1, because everyone prefers season 2 apart from me. It's like, well, look at my list. It's not going very well so far on the season 2, is it? Coming in at number 49, so my least favourite season 1 episode is Divide and Conquer. Divide and Conquer is a funny little episode, but it just has nothing. Like, it is that is the most filler episode we've ever had. Like, most of Witch's episode aren't filler. It's like there are ones that are like slightly lighter and less plot heavy, but I wouldn't say many of them are just filler. Divide and Conquer feels like filler. It doesn't feel like it's got any purpose, and it's fun. It definitely makes me laugh, and everybody knows that I love a good old ski trip episode, because they have one. You remember the ski trip episode of American Dragon Jake Long? That was like the pivotal moment in season 1 where Jake finds out who Rose really is. And it's like, then you come to Witch's ski trip episode and you're like, oh, it's just people fighting over some lassie called Sandra. Divide and Conquer feels silly. It doesn't feel like it does anything. There's so many moments I love, you know, everything to do with Caleb and when he's trying to snowboard, and Tarani's comment about how she respects Halen because she doesn't care what other people think of her or if she'll ever walk again. But most of it is just kind of dumb. Like, it's just kind of there. Also, don't ever talk to me about Blunk's Cedric mean Ethel, she went Denmark, got a lot of cheese, because I'm like, what in all God's name are you talking about? When did Blunk master Earth geography and find out about Denmark and Danish cheese? What? And who the fuck is Ethel? And don't start with me about the TV Tropes thing where someone put down that it's Alchemy's last name, because I deleted that shit from TV Tropes. If you're ever looking for the person that... If you're out there and you put that in TV Tropes and you want to know who deleted it, it was me. You can shout at me in the comments, but I'm sorry, that's not a thing. That's... this isn't the place. Yeah, it's just a really kind of silly filler episode. It doesn't really do anything, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it when I just want, like, to watch Witch and don't really want to put any thought into it, because it is a pretty mindless episode. So it's like, I just want to watch some, like, cute Witch, like, fun and just see the characters. And I'm not really looking for, like, a lot of plot or story or anything. I'm just looking for the characters being fun and hanging out. It's a good episode for that, but it's not really a good episode for plot. And TV shows should kind of be about plot, shouldn't they? Anyway. We're back to season 2 now for number 48, and I feel bad about this one, but I've never managed to gel with it. Like, it's just, like, it should be an episode I love, but it isn't. And it's U is for Undivided. U is for Undivided is a Cornelia-centric episode in season 2, so I should love it, because Cornelia is my favourite person, my favourite character. But it just is kind of silly. Like, they all get turned into, like, fairy tale people, and it's, like, all in, like, because we find out that Lillian's got powers. Now, first of all, I like that Lillian has powers, but that's more because because Cornelia's my favourite character, and the fact that Lillian's the heart of Earth opens up lots of cool plot lines for Cornelia. Do I think it was a particularly smart decision to make for the writers? No, not really. I don't think it was maybe the best choice. I don't really know what possessed them to go down the route of Lillian being the heart of Earth, but they did, and that's the world we live in now. These are the hands we're given. But the episode itself is kind of daft. It gives us talking Napoleon for the first time, and Napoleon, I love Napoleon. I spoke at length in my Spotlight on the Witch recurring cast about my love of Ed Asner. I love Napoleon, but U.S. for Undivided is kind of all over the shop, because it's like this idea that, like, Lillian has powers of, like, projection, mental manifestation. So when Cornelia and Matt start telling her, like, a bedtime story, it all becomes real. So, like, the Guardians, like, get turned into the people in the story, and then there's, like, dragons, and Nerissa's, like, 100 feet tall, and it's just kind of, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm 26 now, so, like, watching an episode where people get turned into, like, a fairy tale is silly to me. Like, I still love the episode of Scrubs with the fairy tale. That's a great episode. I think it's in, like, series 7. But, yeah, I just don't feel like it's not an episode I've ever gelled with in which. It's not, when I watch it, like, it's, like, when I'm watching through the series and I get to use for Undivided, I'm kind of like, this is not my favourite episode. But it does have one aspect that I absolutely love, which is the amount of scenes we have between Cornelia and Matt, because I really, really love their friendship, and I have like whole headcanons about it because I just think the two of them make such good friends. And I don't know, I just have a real thing for them. Like, I always say that, like, if Cornelia hadn't ended up with Caleb, I could see a world where she could have ended up with Matt, because I think they make a really good pair, but I think they kind of work as, like, besties. I feel like they're the kind of friends where, like, they started off in class absolutely hating each other, and, like, Matt used to, like, throw stationery at the back of her head, and then she confronted him one day and they became friends. That's my kind of headcanon about them. I just think they've got a really nice friendship. So the amount of, like, Cornelia and Matt scenes in that episode, like, I've got so many screenshots of, like, the bit where he's got his hands on her shoulders and she's, like, smiling at him, because I'm like, they're so cute! Like, cute couple that aren't a couple, but, like, they could have been. Cornelia can honestly be shipped with so many characters. Like, Cornelia and Aldarn is also always a good ship. Like, I'm Cornelia and Caleb until I die, but, you know, I feel like you can ship her with so many characters. Cornelia just has that energy where she just sort of works with everyone. Number 47, we're back to season 1 now, and it's Stop the Presses. Stop the Presses is another sort of filler episode. It's, again, I mean, this is the thing. At this point, like, other than, I would say A, Z, and C, I probably would say not that I don't like them at all, but they're definitely the ones that I would say I kind of am on the cusp of disliking. I dislike A's for Anonymous. I sort of dislike Z and C. Pretty much from Divide and Conquer onwards, I like all of these episodes. It's just a case of what ones I like more and what ones I like least. So Stop the Presses I definitely enjoy. It's an episode I like. But in terms of its quality, it's definitely not the best, because it's all about the girls. Like, Martin, their friend Martin, is, like, staking out the school overnight because something has been, like, trashing the school during the night, and the girls, like, stake out the school to try and find out what it is, and it turns out it's, as Cornelia describes it,
wild, slimy, invisible pig!
Basically, it's a thing from Meridian called a Hermeneutics Beast, and it is basically a big, slimy, invisible pig, and it's, like, running through the school, so, like, the girls, like, having to, like, chase it through the school and try and catch it, and it's, like, is kind of silly. It's like the classic early season 1 cheese episodes where it's like, of course the girls are chasing a slimy invisible pig around the school. I can see me in the writer's room like, what should we do for the next episode, guys? What if they chase a slimy invisible pig around the school? Print it. Brilliant. Oscar worthy. So, like, I like it because it's fun, and it's like that kind of, like, season 1 silliness that I really enjoy, but it's not a particularly valuable episode in the grand scheme of things. One of those ones where it's like, I would not present you Stop the Presses and say, here's a really great episode of Witch. I bet you if you watch this, you're going to be obsessed with the series, you'll want to watch it. Like, nobody's going to watch Stop the Presses and think, wow, what a great TV show. However, it has the subplot where Irma has to take Martin out on a date to get him out of the school. So they go to Cedric's bookshop to some kind of poetry reading, and there's some guy reading a poem in a way too deep voice for the character's depiction. And it's like, 2 towels, 2 towels, 1 for my face, and 1 for the face I show the world. Which is wetter, and which is better? Aha! 2 towels.
2 towels. 2 towels. 1 for my face, 1 for the face I show the world. Which is wetter? And which is better? Aha! 2 towels.
It's really sad that I know that off the top of my head. And then Irma's like, let's get out of here before I hear the one about the 2... No, it was still better than the one about the 2 soaps. So that's hilarious. Other than that, not really the best episode in the world, is what I'm saying. So next up we have number 46 on my list, and I've got it as Y is for Yield. Y is for Yield's a weird one because I feel like it's definitely a good episode for plot, but it's almost like too good an episode for plot because very little actually happens in the episode other than them trying to explain the gambit that they've been playing in the past like 5 episodes or something, so like a lot of the episode is just them sort of explaining why they've done certain things across the past few episodes. The only like plot in the episode is Tarani's like struggling to study for exams and she keeps getting headaches, but as it turns out her headaches are actually because the chicken and Elion are like trying to contact her telepathically and it's giving her a headache. And Caleb and Blanc get captured by Phobos and Will and Tarani have to go and free them. That's like all that actually happens plot-wise in the episode. Everything else is them explaining why they've done stuff in previous episodes, so like the Wraithor plan and the Phobos going to Kanjakar plan and why they let Phobos get the seal of Nerissa and why they let Phobos out in the first place and how, you know, they had Wraithor playing like 2 sides and how he was trying to lure them to Kanjakar so that the oath that they made Phobos swear would cause him to lose his powers. And it's like, that's all great and it's super cool. The first time round, that's like, oh my god, what? Like, that's what they were doing? That's crazy. But then, like, when you watch it when you're like me and you've binged the series so many times and you get that episode, you're like, yeah, I know this is the gambit. Like, I don't really need you to tell me again. And it's like, cause the whole episode is just them sort of like explaining the gambit. I'm like, I already know all of this. Can we get on with it? I do like that episode because it does have the nice Caleb and Blanc and the jail scenes, because like I love their friendship. I love Caleb and Blanc and the way that their friendship like really evolved from like Caleb despising the ground that Blanc walked on to being like his best friend and loving him like wholeheartedly, and the fact that story culminates with Caleb like pushing Blanc out of the way of that spear, which is what gets them both put into prison in the first place. And it's like Caleb has grown to the point where he would like happily jump in front of a weapon to save Blanc's life and go to jail with him and, you know, face death row with him because like he's just developed such a strong bond with this kid who he once upon a time completely hated. So I love their friendship and I think that's a really nice episode to like show their friendship. But other than that, it's a lot of recapping that very much slows down the pace of the finale of the season. So it's one of Tarani's centric episodes, but it's not really a great episode for her either because she doesn't really get a chance to do much because the episode is so consumed with doing other things, but whatever. Number 45 on my list is Framed. Framed is another one where I'm like, thing is, Framed is based on a very like well-known, well-remembered comic book issue. It was called The Last Tier. I'm like, I don't have a damn clue. The Last Tier was the name of the picture. So it was a comic book issue about this painting that the girls get stuck in, painted by this guy called Elias Vandal. So it is taken from that really well-remembered comic book issue from the first arc. And it was like a guy who, like, if I remember right, it was something to do with he was like Phobos's court painter, but he like painted like a really ugly picture of Phobos, and like as his punishment he was trapped inside his own painting forever. But Framed, the episode, I just always kind of felt was like a bit meh. Like it's not bad, but it's just not really that great either. It's just kind of meh. I like the style. I like how they change the art style when they're in the painting, and this whole idea that they can like draw their own outfits, and then if they want to like, you know, get rid of Cedric, they have to use paint thinner to like destroy the paint from the painting. And it's definitely a clever episode, and you know, getting trapped inside a painting was also a plot of a Charmed episode, so I like when I can make comparisons between TV show plot episodes. That's a really good episode of Charmed as well. But I don't know, I just don't think Framed really is that impressive. It's just kind of it's neither here nor there for me. It does have the bit where it does have the one instance where someone almost swore in an episode, which is funny. It's the bit where like Irma says something, I can't actually remember what the line is. It's something to do with the fact that she's shoveling out stables, and she says something that's clearly meant to be horseshit, but it's like horse, and then it's like a neigh that like blocks it out, and I'm like, the fact that they got that past the censors amazes me to this day.
Guy, poo, yuck! That smells worse than horse.
If Blanc had nickel for every time Blanc hear that.
Bring back Witch and let them swear. You know how much I would live for a Witch for adults where Cornelia's got like a potty mouth. Like, my friends always joke about how, like, when I was doing my Witch playthrough, and there was this one bit where I yelled at Will, "Close the portal, bitch!" And they were like, that would 100% be something Cornelia would say. And I'm like, honestly, bring back Witch and let Cornelia yell, "Close the portal, bitch," at Will. That's what we need in life. The pandemic would be over if Cornelia could say, "Close the portal, bitch," to Will. Also, the bit where Caleb's like, when Irma's like, "Look where the girls are trapped," and he's like, "In your phone?"
Caleb! Look where the others are trapped!
In your phone?
Also, the fact it's a flip phone. But yeah, it's not, it's fine. It's just fine. It's not a great episode, it's not a bad episode, it's just fine. Which is why it's like 45 on the list, because this is definitely like at your middle of the road content here. Number 44 is the Stone of Threeb. The Stone of Threeb is, again, fine. It's a fine episode. There's nothing wrong with it. This is going to be me for the next like 20 episodes. I'm going to be like, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just fine. It's the episode where we get a really weird story about Wira that I'm still not entirely sure makes sense canonically, but whatever. There's this magic stone. It's called, well, the episode's called the Stone of Threeb, and in the episode they only ever refer to it as the Star of Threeb, so I'm not sure who made that decision, but never mind. There's this magical thing called the Star of Threeb. It's made out of Threebite, apparently. Threeb is like a mountain. The amount of random Meridian world building that they never elaborate on frustrates me to no end. Like, I want to know everything about Meridian, and all we get is like weird random throwaway lines from Caleb. It's like, oh yeah, it was like, oh, I met the beautiful daughter of the Threebian Lord. And I'm like, can you give me some context on what any of that means? Because like, that sounds like some world building right there that you're not making me privy to. Like, how am I meant to update the wiki if you don't tell me things? But the girls all lose their powers, and they're trying to give Blanc a bath. And then they get stuck in their guardian form, and then they have to fight a giant plant monster that destroys a railway line. And Caleb comes out with that line that I absolutely love, where he says, like,
people do incredible things every day who don't have special powers.
People do incredible things every day who don't have special powers. And I'm like, fucking hell yeah, you're right, Caleb. Fair enough, he might have been talking about himself, because he is a bit egotistical, but I'm going to put down that he's talking about, you know, healthcare workers and stuff. But he could have been talking about him. But yeah, it's not bad episodes. Because I remember I read a thing where it said like the writers really wanted to show, you know, an episode where the girls don't have any powers, and like how would they cope with not having powers. And I think it's a great idea, it's a great thing to show. It's just not the most exciting episode in the world, probably because they don't have powers, so you can't do like fun, like, you know, big battle scenes, because the girls are like trying to chop up a giant tree plant thing with like axes, so. Plus, there's the whole thing about Blanc needing a bath, which gets old really quickly. And I say that as Lost the Blanc stan. Like, even I was like, this plot's getting old by about like 5 minutes into the episode. So, it's meh. But it is also the moment, I'm pretty sure that is the moment that we find out that Elion is Phobos' sister. Like, that, it's hard because you think back and I'm like, especially for someone like me who started with the comics, like, I knew Elion was Phobos' sister before I ever started watching the TV show, so my brain quite often can't remember. Like, I never had that moment of watching the show and being like, oh my god, Elion's Phobos' sister, because I knew from the beginning, so I can't really remember when, but I'm pretty sure that the Stone of Threeb is the first time that that's confirmed in the series that Elion is Phobos' long-lost sister that he's been searching for all season. So that's obviously a huge moment. But other than that, it's kind of just a bit generic and a bit kind of fine. Number 43 is an episode that, this is so weird, right? This is what I meant. When I was a kid, this was one of my top 3 episodes. It's now number 43 on my list, which just shows how you change over time. And it's the Seal of Phobos. The Seal of Phobos is, I want to say it's about the 20th episode of season 1. And when I was a kid, I really liked it. I think because it had some cute Cornelia and Caleb moments in it. And unfortunately, when I was younger, that was sort of the thing that I based my favourite episodes on. It's like, there's some really cute Cornelia and Caleb moments in here. This makes it my favourite episode. And it's like, there's more to the show than that, you weird little shipper girl. And I'm still an obsessive shipper, and I still love Cornelia and Caleb, but I've sort of got to the point now where I'm like, there are other things to enjoy in this show, you little strange child. But Seal of Phobos, unfortunately, doesn't do very much. It's like about, the girls are like doing out, they're doing this like inline skating thing, and then all these portals pop up everywhere. And Caleb's trying to get to Earth, but then Will keeps closing the portals just as he gets to the other side, which is quite funny because I'm like, that's something we never really thought about, is like, what happens if like Caleb's on Meridian and Will's closing all the portals? How is he meant to get back? Like, I feel like that's something that up until then they'd never really like established. It's like, if he's there doing stuff and he needs to escape back onto Earth and Will's closing all the portals, how's he gonna get home? Like, what are you doing? So she's like, oh, zip up the portal, and every time he goes to go through a portal, it disappears in front of him. It's like, this poor boy is getting chased by a giant snake monster, and he's very quickly running out of adrenaline, and it's all your fault because you won't leave a portal open for 2 seconds. But then they all get trapped. Caleb gets captured and gets taken to some random quarry, and then the girls are like, oh no, Caleb, we better go and get him. And it's also the bit that recreates this moment from the comics where like they find out that Galgita, their teacher, was the nanny that brought Ellie onto Earth when she was a baby, and she's like actually like this kind of shapeshifty monster. Again, much later in the season than the way it is in the comic book. And it's a really important moment, which is great, and I'm glad it's in there. But then the rest of the episode doesn't really do much. It also feels really dumb because what happens is that Elion appears, tells the girls basically, I'm fine, I'm happy, there's nothing bad, leave me alone. And they're like, well, if Elion says she's fine, I guess that's that. And then just decide that that's their guardian job over and they can just carry on being normal. And I'm like, you are all dumb shits. Like, okay, even if Elion's fine, have you not noticed that, you know, Phobos is draining the life force of the Meridianites? You're actually just going to sit there and go, oh, well, like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Where's your, I don't know, what's the Guardian equivalent of a Hippocratic Oath? I feel like you should be doing something about this. Also, while all this is going on, Caleb's stuck on Meridian and they apparently don't give a shit. So they're like, let's go inline skating. I'm so glad that we're not Guardians anymore while Caleb's getting, you know, beat the crap out of by Cedric. Bad friendship award for everyone on that day. And then at the end they're like, oh no, Caleb's stuck in a quarry, we better go get him. And then they're like, oh, guess we're not, oh yeah. And then they find the book. No, they have the Book of Secrets. They find the Seal of Phobos. The Seal of Phobos opens the Book of Secrets. They find out that Phobos is planning to turn Elion into a black rose, and they're like, well, I guess our guardian days aren't over after all. And I'm like, you are stupid. That is definitely one of the dumbest things that the girls ever did in the show. I'm just sitting there like, y'all are stupid. But the whole thing with Galgita is really good. There's a lot. I feel like I've slated this episode harder than. I feel like I've put this in the wrong place because I feel like I've really went in hard on why this episode was stupid. And I've got it like higher than other episodes because I still like the Seal of Phobos. I still enjoy it when I watch it. But I'm like, while I've been talking here, I've noticed that I've got a real thing about this episode, don't I? I've got a real issue with this. Oh well. I enjoy it. I enjoy a lot of the character moments in it. Also, Blunk sings his little Passling song, which obviously is the best thing ever.
Me mother smelled bad, and so did me dad, along with me brothers and aunts. We passed down our shirts full of grease, grime, and dirt, and even our underpants. That's why they call us passed.
Caleb doesn't have a shirt on, which when I was, you know, a little child and thought that cartoon 15-year-olds were buff, that was a big deal for me. I'm now 26 and I'm not crushing on cartoon 15-year-olds, that's fucking weird. But back then, little Oz was like, oh my god, Caleb's not got his shirt on. But yeah, I feel like the girls were definitely throwing the idiot ball on that day. Each and every one of them. They were playing hot potato with the idiot ball in that episode. Number 42 on the list, we have the penultimate episode of season 1, The Stolen Heart. The Stolen Heart is definitely filler. It's a shame because it was quite clear that they had like one episode that they hadn't managed to figure out a plot for. So they were like, we need to put in an extra episode here. We need 26 episodes and we've only got plots for 25. So they were like, just make The Stolen Heart. Yes, The Stolen Heart does have plot relevance because it's the episode where Matt finds out that the girls are guardians. But considering it's the second last episode and there were, you know, we were up until now steamrolling towards the finale of like, you know, the big confrontation with Phobos, and it gets sort of ground to a halt because we have to stop and have the Stolen Heart. That definitely makes it feel like filler more than anything. Also, one of the biggest issues with the Stolen Heart is that the actual plot is, according to season 2, can't be possible, because in season 2 they established this idea that a heart can only be taken freely, it cannot be given by force. But in season 1, in this episode, The Stolen Heart, the heart is stolen by Jeek. He just takes it from Will's hand and runs off with it, and it's like, according to season 2 lore, you can't actually do that, that's not possible. Which makes it, every time you watch this episode back, you're like, how is he able to steal the heart? It doesn't work like that. But clearly that wasn't a rule when they wrote that episode, and then they made it a rule, and they were just like, pretend you never saw The Stolen Heart. No one likes that episode anyway. The only time that episode really ever becomes useful is when you're me and you're trying to make a witch Christmas video and it's the one episode where it's snowing. So it does snow in a lot of episodes, but in that episode there's actual snow falling and there's a lot of snow in it, so it makes for a good Christmas fan video. Other than that, it's not got a huge amount of relevance. If you're a Will and Matt fan, it will definitely be a good episode for you because it's got a lot of Will and Matt. Otherwise, doesn't do a huge amount. It does have that that like BBB plot, DE plot. Hey, it's me. So for some reason, like random, like 5 minutes of my video got corrupted and it's disappeared, so I'm just filling in the gap. So I was about to say there's a subplot in The Stolen Heart about Cornelia getting mad at Irma for always like making light of situations and like finding everything to be a joke, and she starts getting like angry at her. And I think that's a nice little subplot because I feel like it's something that's never really addressed up until that point, is just like I don't think either of them is in the wrong. I think Cornelia's you can see my random Butters from South Park over there. Where is he? There. Goodness, I actually cannot hold my camera. Yeah, I don't think either of them is wrong. Because I think Cornelia is perfectly justified to be like annoyed that Irma seems to like not take seriously the fact that like Cornelia's best friend has been captured by evil and is living on another planet with an evil prince who wants to turn her into a black rose. At the same time, there's nothing wrong with using humour to try and like mask your pain, because obviously Irma's upset too, because like Elion's her friend too. And so I think it's a nice little subplot. I think it kind of just gets resolved at the end by them just being like, Irma's jumping up and down idea saved us from getting stuck in an avalanche, so you can't be mean to her anymore. And that was just sort of the end of that story. But I still think it was a nice little addition. So yeah, overall, I really like The Stolen Heart. I think it's a nice little episode, especially in the winter. It's a nice one to watch because it's snowing. It's like the closest, we don't get a Christmas episode of Witch, so it's like the closest thing to a Christmas episode just because it's snowing. But I don't think it's a particularly like masterpiece of an episode in any way. Hi, back again. So I realised after I took my footage that I recorded yesterday to patch up the video, that I was actually missing the entire of the number 41 on my list. I didn't realise. I thought that my list went from The Stolen Heart to D is for Dangerous. Didn't realise there was an episode in between, and so I'm now having to record that today. So this is endless, and I apologise because every single video I make has some kind of ridiculous tech glitch or me having to like patch up later. But anyway, so let's just get into it, shall we? So Number 41 on my countdown is Walk This Way. I feel like Walk This Way is a bit of like, I've always felt it's a bit of an odd episode. Like, I just feel like it doesn't, I don't know, I always feel like it's just a bit kind of like, it feels fillery, but I feel like it also just kind of stands out a bit. And I don't know if that, I know that Walk This Way was one of those episodes that aired out of sync in the US, but I watched them on DVD, so they're in the right order, but it still kind of just feels like it's a bit of an odd place in the series. But I don't know, like, it maybe just is that, look at the state of my hair, I need to wash it. I'm planning on washing it later. I'm waiting until I take the dog out for the second time and then I'll wash it so I'm not covered in mud or whatever, and then going for a shower and then getting covered in mud. Anyway, I do like Walk This Way though. I really like the idea behind the Horn of Hypnos. I think it's like a cool item, and I like the fact that it got brought back for G is for Garbage, because like I just think it's a really cool little artifact and I like the use behind it. And I find Walk This Way really funny though. I think like it's one of the episodes that truly makes me laugh out loud. The bit where the marching band the marching band are group ditching school.
Hey, look, the marching band is group ditching school.
Wait a minute, I've seen that look before. They're trance marchers. It's spread to Heatherfield.
It's absolutely one of the funniest moments in the whole series for me, and like how out of tune it is just hysterical. Like, I think that is hilarious. And I do think it's a really funny episode. Like the bit, you know, they all end up, the school is meant to be the school dance, and then everyone falls under the spell of the Horn of Hypnos, which is like basically some kind of like, I don't really know, it's like a Viking horn almost, like a golden Viking horn, but it hypnotizes you if you are in its general vicinity when someone blows the horn. So Cedric is using that. Cedric is using rebels to build his giant drill. So he's using the horn to try and hypnotize the rebels and then get them to help Phobos. But of course the horn ends up on Earth, because of course it does. And then it ends up, people keep passing it around thinking that it's like, you know, a regular instrument. And so like Halen picks it up and she's like, haha, let me like blow the horns. So then her dad ends up getting hypnotized, and then it ends up at the school. So then it ends up in the school band. So then the school band are blowing it and hypnotizing the whole town. And it's really funny. I think it's a really fun episode. I just think it feels a bit odd where it's placed in the series. I can't remember if it's the first episode where we see Miranda or if that's the one after. Again, this is because Walk This Way is out of place and I can't ever remember what way around the episodes go, because it's, if you watch it like, if you watch like the American way, it would be out of place. If it is the first episode where we see Miranda though, that's obviously a good thing for that episode, because who doesn't love Miranda? She's one of the best characters in the show. We all love her. We love our Spidey gal. And obviously, I mean, obviously, one of my favourite things about Walk This Way is Caleb just shredding on an electric guitar on the school roof.
Back to Meridian.
How did I get up here? A lot of people got carried away with the school dance fever.
It's those hypnotic rock and roll rhythms. You just have to move.
And climb. So I must be having fun. Oh, God.
Which is just hilarious, because like, I mean, they have instruments in Meridian, so like, I've seen people say before, like, how does Caleb know how to play guitar? I imagine he can probably play like a lute or something, because we've seen people in Meridian like playing medieval instruments. How he knows how to play an electric guitar, not sure. Don't know if the strings on a lute are similar to the strings on a guitar, but maybe they have like actual guitars in Meridian. Who knows at this point? But yeah, so he like goes in, he comes running into the hall, Matt's band are there and they're like, God, where is everybody? Like, it's the dance, no one's here. And Caleb just runs in, steals his guitar and just like runs back out, and Matt's just like, and it's so funny because it's like at that point in time he doesn't really know Caleb. He's like, so this random guy just runs in, steals his guitar and runs away, and he's just kind of like, who the fuck was that? But it's like, he ends up your best pal. Eventually you'll learn why Caleb is quite so insane. Because every time Matt comes across Caleb, there's always something really dumb going on. Like, in the Rebel Rescue, he comes running up to Will and he's like, you need to come help me, and they just run off. And it's like, Matt must be like, who the fuck is this guy? Why does he just run in places, steal my guitar, steal my girlfriend, just run away? But that's what he does. He takes the guitar, climbs up onto the school roof and just starts shredding, and plays the anti-hypno tune. If you play a certain tune, it like breaks the spell. So that's what he does. But before that, like, everyone's hypnotized. The school students are literally climbing the walls of like the apartments around the school. Principal Knickerbocker is like climbing the walls, and then the girls are like, oh yeah, everyone's just caught up in school dance fever. Sometimes you just have to scale a building. So I think it's a really fun episode. I think it really does make me laugh, and it's got some nice moments in it. Like, well, it's got a really weird moment where Tirani claims that Nigel finally figured out that he likes her, which feels completely out of place because I don't even think we've met Nigel at that point in the series. We've never been like formally introduced to him, so I've got no idea where that line came from, because Tirani and Nigel don't really then ever have any scenes until A is for Anonymous, so I've got no idea where that came from, but never mind. Whatever. But it's got some nice like Will and Matt moments. It's got some nice Curly and Caleb moments. And it's just a really fun episode. And I really like the Horn of Hypnos. I think it's funky. So I think it's a fun episode, but is it like the most impactful, plot advancing, quality writing episode? No, it definitely isn't. But it's still a really fun episode. So, and now back to yesterday's recording, and then from yesterday's recording back to the recording from the 16th of December. I'm doing more time traveling than the Doctor at this point. Insert TARDIS music here. And then at number 40 on my list, we have D is for Dangerous. I think D is for Dangerous has a lot going for it, but I think I'm trying to remember what I said in my original video, because I recorded it literally 2 weeks ago, and I only noticed yesterday that it's missing the chunk of video, so I'm now trying to remember what I said 2 weeks ago for this video. What I believe I said about D is for Dangerous was just that it almost has too much going on, and because there's so much happening, it feels like it needs more time to focus on like each individual thing. So like all the plots we've got going on, there's Caleb trying to train Matt to be a warrior. There's Cornelia and Caleb arguing about their relationship. There's everyone playing hot potato with Mr. Huggles. There's Elion trying to adjust to having a life on Earth and a life on Meridian. There's Narissa attacking Meridian with the Annihilators. And it just feels like there's so much. Oh, there's Will and Matt arguing over whether or not Matt can be part of the team. And it's like there's just so many things happening that it like almost feels like there's like too much happening, so nothing gets like enough focus. But at the same time, I like all of those plots. I think I really like getting to see Elion trying to like adjust to having a life on Earth and a life on Meridian, because and I wish we got more time to look at that, because we don't really get a lot of time to look at her like trying to balance a life between Earth and Meridian outside of this episode. And I would really like that, because I think it's like important to show that Elion's not just the Queen of Meridian, that she is still who she's always been. Like, she's still that you know, teenage Earth girl that she's always been. I have to apologise, I'm wearing my dressing gown because I mean it's the 30th of December. We're in the weird twilight zone that exists between Christmas and New Year, and I just don't give a shit anymore about getting dressed. I'm also looking after my dad's dog again, like I was in the later parts of the Witch GBA playthrough, but he's been quiet at the moment. He's on the floor. I thought he was going to jump up and try and be in the video, but he's not, although he can tell that I'm talking about him and he's now moving. Yeah, so I think D is for Dangerous, I think overall is like a really interesting episode, and I like what it does, and I think the Annihilators are cool, even though like if you translate Narissa's Latin and incantation, it says something like, "Am I speaking Annihilator? Sorry, sometimes it just slips out," which is pretty cool on the writer's part. And I like to see Matt and Caleb doing training together. It's hysterical. Like, I love all of that. I think that's really fun. The Mr. Huggles thing is a bit excessive, like, especially in an episode that already has so much going on. They probably didn't need to have the everybody takes Mr. Huggle for a night thing, but whatever, it's there, so. But yeah, I think overall I really like D is for Dangerous. I like all the different individual elements. I think this bit is still left in my video, so you know what? I'll hand back over to my past self now, and I'll leave you now. This has been so awkward. I hate having to re-record things. It drives me up the wall. So yeah, individually I love all the elements. I love all of those individual plots. Matt trying to train, Will trying to learn her powers, Will and Matt trying to establish what's their dynamic now that he's part of the group, Cornelia and Caleb's issues, Caleb saving Cornelia from the Annihilators because my heart, my ship, I love it. The whole thing about trying to look after Mr. Huggles is also in there, which I just forgot and remembered. Elion trying to decide what she's going to do about Earth and Meridian, and Nerissa becoming more of a prominent threat. It just feels like there was all these things happening at once. Means there's just too much happening at once, whereas if they tried to like maybe spread those plots out over a few episodes, we'd maybe have more time to deal with them, whereas it just sort of feels like everything's happening. So I think that's maybe my issue, is it's like it would be a really good episode if maybe it was longer, or if they just took some of the elements out and moved them to other episodes, whereas as it stands there's just so much going on. Because there's another plot, Caleb trying to adapt to going to school on Earth. So you've got Matt training to be a warrior, Elion's issues with spreading her life between Earth and Meridian, Will and Matt's relationship issues about her not wanting him to train to be a warrior and him wanting to train to be a warrior, Caleb trying to adjust to life on Earth, again, but going to school on Earth, Cornelia and Caleb's relationship issues because they're still fighting, everybody fighting over who's going to take Mr. Huggles for the day. I just counted 6 different plots. Or did I count 7? I lost track. 6 or 7 different plots in the one episode, plus we've got all the fight scenes, the Annihilators, Nerissa, all of that going on, and it's like, there is so much going on in this episode, and it's 22 minutes long. You are pushing the boundaries of what you can put in one episode. And I think it's like, it should be the best episode ever because it's got all these elements, but actually it just means that you're not getting enough time to each element, so it just all sort of feels like it's really rushed and the episode's moving at 100 miles an hour to get through everything. And that's sort of where my issue comes with D is for Dangerous. Again, not a bad episode, really enjoy it, it's just not perfect. It's got some issues in there.